Good evening, everyone. I am Saskia Marina Lumin, and I'm here to report the globalization and the migration. But first, let us know what is globalization is, and as defined, globalization is the growing interdependence or interconnectedness of the world's economies, culture, population, brought about by cross-border trade in goods and services. While globalization is a movement of people who offer their ideas, labor, investment in the market that feature opportunities unavailable in their home countries. So basically, migration happens because people want to explore new and better opportunities to provide their living. And there are estimated 272 million international migrants around the world, or equivalent to 3.5% of the world's population. So how does globalization and migration are connected? So basically, globalization causes migration because when a country is in progress, they continually build infrastructures and demand for labor, either unskilled or skilled workers, and people find it a better job opportunity which causes them to move from their home countries to other countries to make a living. On the other hand, migration causes intensification of socio-economic across border. So this will be discussed on the latter part. So we have here the list of positive effects of migration. So the first one is unemployment is reduced. So again, due to globalization, the demand for workers rise and it gives better job opportunities, which are basically new opportunities to explore. And what's good about this is that even unskilled workers are still able to get a job, and most of the time they get daily works which they work and then they get paid at the end of the day. So the second one would be it helps to improve social life. It improves brotherhood and embraces diversity. Why? Because people who migrate came from different countries with different culture, languages, customs that allows them or us to understand and to be more open about differences of each race and ethnic group. So the next one would be it leads to greater economic growth. And just like what I said earlier, migration causes intensification of socio-economic. Why? Because skilled and unskilled workers contributes at least 9.4% of the global GDP of a country. If a country continually progresses and demands for workers, services, and goods, there's a big chance that the economy will arise. So the last one would be children gets better opportunity for higher education. So one of the reasons why migrants move from their place to another is that because the country is so poor they cannot afford to give the children the quality education they deserve. So we're done with the positive effects of migration. Let's go on to negative effects of migration. So the first one would be migrants changes the population of a place or a country. So just like what's happening in Colombia right now, the citizens of Venezuela goes to Colombia because of the current situation of their country. And by that, there's an increase of population in Colombia. Imagine having millions of people already, they still accepting migrants from Venezuela. And this uneven number of population can lead to the second effect of migration, which is the too much pressure on natural resources. So the growth of population due to migration is harmful. Why? Because the increase of population means the increase of the demand on the supply of food, water, and other necessities. And since it wasn't the ideal amount of people in a certain country, they struggled to sustain the needs of the people, which fall under the third negative effect of migration, which is the poverty makes them unable to live a normal and healthy life. So there are challenges that migration facing right now. First is treatment to migrants. In this case, most especially to unskilled workers, they are being underpaid and in return of their hard works. Also experience poor working conditions and they deprived from health benefits. So the second one is discrimination. So we all know that some people or groups are still experiencing consistent denied from employment opportunities, education and training opportunities, either because of their color, race, and ethnic groups. And in solution to that, there's an advocacy and action in promotion of human rights law and respect for diversity. So, in conclusion, migration contributes to different aspects of globalization that makes them interconnected and develop relationship over the years.
Good morning, everyone. I am Jamaica Nisnegan, and for today, my report is all about the history of migration. Una muna, what is migration? It is the movement of people from one place to another. It can be within countries or between countries. Sa madaling salita, ang migration, ito yung pagpapalipat-lipat ng mga tao sa iba't ibang lugar. Pwede siyang permanent, temporary, or seasonal lang. How it was started? Paano nga ba siya nagsimula? Sabi ng mga scientists na nag-study ng land masses and climate know that the Pleistocene Ice Age created a land bridge that connected Asia and North America over 13 years ago. Yan. Napag-alaman nila or ang theory ng mga scientists noon is na doon dumadaan yung mga nagmamigrate na unang tao. And they considered they considered first immigrant was originated in African continent. Based on the earliest fossil of considered Homo sapiens were found and are approximately 200 years old. 200,000 years old. Yan. Yung mga scientists, sinabi nila na first immigrant daw was originated in African continent and it is based on the earlier fossils na natagpuan nila. Yan. Punta na tayo sa earlier era. Nung earlier era, between 1850 to 1914, millions of people a year were drawn to the New World by the turn of 20th century. A World Bank report, International Migration and Global Economic Order, estimates that 10% of the world's population was migrating in this time period, whereas migration today is around 3%. Nung time daw na yon, noong earlier era, 10% of the world's population ay nagmamigrate. The effect of the first era of migration can be seen in the population compositions of many countries in Western Hemisphere. Ayan. Dumami daw based daw yon sa, makikita daw yon yung effect nung first era of migration dun sa population composition sa mga country daw in Western Hemisphere. In the latter part of 19th century, for example, nearly 15% of the US population was foreign-born, with the overwhelming majority of these immigrants arriving from Europe. Nung time daw na yan, one of the example daw is yung mga taga-US. The US population, karamihan daw 15% was foreign-born at a majority daw ng immigrants ay arriving from Europe. At the same time, that European immigration was surging during 19th century, yung Chinese and Japanese immigrants were arriving in the large number to the west coast of US and Hawaii. However, stream of immigration to the US were quickly halted by a series of restrictive policies targeting Chinese, Japanese, and finally all Asian immigrants at the turn of 20th century. Nung time na yon, nung yung mga Chinese and Japanese immigrants, nung dumadami na sila sa west coast of the US and Hawaii, nagkaroon ng mga restrictive policy targeting Chinese, Japanese, and yung other Asian people. Ganyan. The wave of this immigration to the New World resulted to the backlash against immigrants. In the US, immigrants were blamed for crime, disease, poverty, yan. Nagkaroon na dyan ng mga racism towards dun sa mga immigrants. Lalo na dun sa mga Chinese, dun sa mga Asians, yan, sa mga Japanese, and other Asian countries. Nung post-World War II migration, as of the countries of Europe recovered from World War II, they became attractive sa mga immigrants. They opened their doors naman para dun sa mga immigrants na to help rebuild their economies. During the post-war period, technological improvements in land and air decreased the cost of migration. Immigration from developing countries to Western countries expanded rapidly as incomes in the developing world rose enough to make immigration feasible but not enough to make it moot. Noong time na yon, after the World War II, during the post-war period, yung mga technological improvements in land and air ay na-decrease yung mga yung migration nung time na yun dahil nagkaroon ng improvement doon sa pagta-travel through air at saka through land. Kaya mas mahal, kumbaga mas mahal, mas hindi nabe-benefit. Hindi nakaka-benefit yung karamihan kaya na-decrease yung cost of migration nung time na yon. Pero yung mga immigration from developing countries, between developing countries and western countries dahil sila ay mas may pera or may mas pera sila noong time na yon, nakaka-migrate sila sa ibang bansa. Kaya dun sa western countries nag-expand yung income of immigration nung time na yon. Turkish immigrants in Germany compose one of the most noticeable migrants groups during the post-war period. Yan, mga Turkish immigrants daw ay nagpunta sila ng Germany, sila yung pinaka-noticeable. And these immigrants were brought into the Germany as Gastarbeiter or guest workers during the 1950s and 1960s. Yan. Tinawag silang Gastarbeiter or guest workers. Pero ang German government never intended for those immigrants to stay in the Germany permanently. So they weren't granted citizenship or fully integrated into German society. Nag-result din siya sa social conflict that has lasted until today. Yan. As people began to migrate from post-colonial nations to Europe, the previous pattern of migration seen during the colonial period was reversed. This led to major social and demographic changes in European countries that were experiencing the effects of growing multicultural society. Ang nangyari po ay noong nagsimula ng mag-migrate from post-colonial to Europe, nagkaroon ng pagbabago sa European, nagkaroon ng epekto sa mga European countries. Naka-experience sila ng growing multicultural society. Madami ng different culture na andoon naka-experience. At the same time, the strict barriers to immigration in the US born out of the 1924 National Quota Act were lowered come mid-century. However, new migration to the US came not from Europe but primarily from Latin America and Asia. The next report to. The migration today. Paano na nga ba yung migration today? According to the International Organization of Migration, the total number of migrants across the world has increased over the past 10 years from 150 million in 2000 to 214 million in 2010. Ah, yun, noong time daw, yung migration today, syempre, alam naman natin, marami na yung nagmamigrate. Di ba yung migration naman, it's either for work, tourist, or permanent ka doon natitira. Marami na yung nagmamigrate sa ibang bansa. Lalo na dito sa Pilipinas, nakikita naman natin, marami yung pumupunta sa ibang bansa to find job. Ganyan. And pumupunta din dun sila kasi feeling nila or totoo naman na yung 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 trabaho dito sa Pilipinas, lalo na yung sweldo is sobrang maliit na hindi kakayanin yung mga pang-araw-araw na ano ng mga tao ng pagkain nila, yung mga supplies nila and needs nila. Kaya yung iba na pipilitan sila to travel abroad para sila ay makapagtrabaho. That's part of migration yan. Kaya nag-i-increase and ganun din. Ah, yung sa mga sakit, 'di ba, tulad nung COVID-19, marami ang before the COVID-19 became a epidemic pa lang siya sa China. Nung time na yon, maraming Chinese people or Chinese nationals ang pumupunta sa iba't ibang bansa para hindi sila mahawa ng sakit na yon. Yan, yun din yung mga nagiging dahilan. Pero bakit nga ba? What are the reasons why may migration or bakit lumilipat ang tao, bakit kailangan niyang lumipat, ganyan. The first one, sabi sa study, wala po siya sa PPT, and take note of this na lang po. Thank you. Yan. The first one, tulad ng sinabi ko sa kanina is yung for the purpose of survival. Ang mga tao po ng mga unang tao is to survive. Para makasurvive sila, nagmamigrate sila. Kasi kapag sa isang lugar ay hindi na available yung mga needs nila, yung mga pangailangan nila, ang ginagawa nila, lumilipat sila sa ibang lugar na alam nilang mas makakasurvive sila. Yan. The second one naman po is war. Yung mga wars, yan, yung mga nangyayaring war na dati is sobrang talagang malawakan, as in lahat ay apektado. Noong time na yon is nung kaya naglilipatan yung mga tao, kunwari sa isang bansa nagkakagulo na, puro patay na, it's yon ang nangyayari, lumilipat yung mga tao para makasurvive din sila doon sa war na nangyayari doon sa pumupunta sila doon sa mas peaceful, tulad nung sa mga nung time ng Holocaust, 'di ba? Nung inuusig ang mga Jews, ang ginawa ng iba, 'di ba? Meron pang si President Manuel L. Quezon ay nagpapunta siya dito sa Pilipinas, nag-welcome siya ng mga immigrant, mga Jews to help them, yan, na makapagsimula ulit, to save them dahil sa war nga na nangyari o dun sa pag-uusig na nangyari. The third one or lastly is the work of people. Minsan kasi hindi available ang work sa atin kunwari nag-aral ka, ganyan, nag-aral ka ng doktor, dito sa Pilipinas, nag-aral ka ng doktor. Pag nagtrabaho ka na, kukonti na lang yung akala mo kapag nag-doktor ka, marami kang maiipon, marami kang masustain mo pa rin yung needs mo, ganyan. Pero pagdating mo dun sa working place, doon sa pinagtatrabahuhan mo, meron ng mga consequences. Kumbaga, meron mga nagtatrabaho ng overtime pero kulang pa rin yung sahod nila. Walang increase sa payment. Kaya anong nangyayari, ang ginagawa ng mga tao, pumupunta sila sa ibang bansa para makapagtrabaho doon and mas makakita sila ng maayos. And yun po ang about of the history of migration. Kaya thank you for listening. I hope na marami kayong natutunan.
Hello everyone, my name is Crystalline May Giliarte and I'm going to talk about the concept and history of global migration. So for the report outline, first I'm going to define what is migration, followed by the types of migration, and then what is the difference between immigrant and emigrant, what are the different types of migrants, and also the significant events in global migration. So first, let us define what is migration all about. So it says here that it is a process of moving either across an international border or within a state, encompassing any kind of movement of people, whatever its length, composition, and causes. It includes refugees, displaced persons, uprooted people, and economic migrants. So the definition is self-explanatory, but to further explain it, and to simply define, migration is the overall process of the movement of people moving from one place to another. So for example, I'm from Cavite, I'm going to Cebu. Pwede rin naman from Philippines, I'm going to America. So included in this definition as well is the types of people that move from one place to another. So yun nga, refugees, uprooted people, economic migrants, which I will discuss further. So first, let us talk about what are the push and pull factors of migration, or what are the reasons why people move from one place to another. So first is the push factors, or what pushes people away from their home para lumipat sa ibang lugar. So first example we have is war. So, syempre, kapag may kaguluhan sa isang lugar, you want to seek safety. Syempre, for your family and for yourself as well. Another example would be food shortage. So, kapag wala ka ng resources na nakukuha dun sa lugar na yun, hahanap ka ng ibang lugar na makakapag-supply ng basic needs mo. And also, pwede rin natin gawin yung example is yung natural disaster. So, yung mga nasalanta nitong recently lang na ng bagyo, syempre mahirap pang bumangon from sa lugar na yun kasi syempre sobrang destroyed pa nung buong lugar, kumaga devastated pa. So, pwede ang gawin ng iba is mag-seek muna ng shelter sa relatives na nasa ibang lugar para makabangon ulit. Ano naman yung mga pull factors or yung mga nakakahikayat sa tao para lumipat dun sa lugar na yun. So, syempre, if that place is better, has better opportunities, or better food supply, syempre, gugustuhin mo talaga na lumipat dun sa lugar na yun. So, for example, yung mga tao sa probinsya, pupunta sila ng Manila because they think that they could have better job opportunities, a better future for their family kasi sa tingin nila na mas mataas yung sahod sa Manila, or yun nga, maraming job offer. Hindi lang sila stuck dun sa lugar nila na they think na wala silang future. So, ayun. So, here I have the two types of migration. So first, of course, we have the internal or domestic migration. So from the word itself, internal, it is migration from one area to another within the same country lang. So, ayun nga, based from my example kanina, kunyari from Cavite, I'm going to Cebu. So, within the Philippines lang naman yung movement na nangyari. Kasi nga, within the same country or internal or domestic migration. So, syempre, yung kabaligtaran niya, yung international migration is migration from one area to another country. So, from Philippines, for example, I'm going to America or Saudi, basta migration from, to another country na, hindi na within the same. So, pretty self-explanatory as well. So, ano nga bang difference ng immigrant and emigrant? So, when we say immigrant, yun na yung tawag sa'yo kapag dumating ka na dun sa lugar na pupuntahan mo. So, immigrant ako sa Paris. Kasi yun yung pupuntahan ko. And from my country of origin naman, ang tawag sa akin ay emigrant. Kasi I'm about to leave the country of origin I'm from. So, yun nga, Philippines, I'm an emigrant kasi aalis pa lang ako sa lugar na to. And kapag dumating na ako, for example, sa Paris, ang tawag na sa akin doon ay immigrant. Kasi nga, dayo ako, ganun. Kumbaga, yun nga, from another country ako galing. So, migrants naman yung tawag natin sa mga tao na yun nga, that moves from one place to another. So, ayun. Tatandaan nyo lang na you emigrate from your home country while you immigrate to another country. So, emigrant, when you're about to leave your country of origin, and then immigrant kapag nag-arrive ka na dun sa destination mo. So, ayun. So, next, we have the types of migrants. So, first, we have temporary labor migrants. These are the persons who move from one state to another or within their country of residence for the purpose of employment. So, you have to take note here the word temporary, kasi ito mga labor migrants na to, they have a work permit kung saan limited lang yung time na pwede silang mag-reside dun sa lugar na tinutuluyan nila. Kasi nga, work permit lang yun. So, for example, yung mga OFW natin, they are permitted to stay in that country for a year lang, or basta kung ano yung sinasabi dun sa work permit nila. And then, they have to return to their country of origin, which is the Philippines, para, kunyari, asikasuhin ulit yung mga papeles nila, mag-renew ng kontrata, let's say, pwede rin naman sa visa, ayusin nila, and so on. Depende sa company na pinapasukan nila. So, next is highly skilled and business migrants. These are the persons who qualify for a particular visa category, has a high level of educational attainment or occupation. So, I couldn't find a definite definition of this, pero ayan, based from my research, ito na yung pinaka common definition. So, sa highly skilled and business migrants, particularly, ito yung mga, kunyari, may mga H-1B visa or yung sa US. Kasi, bago mo makuha yung visa na to, you have to meet a certain requirement, such as you have a bachelor's degree or higher, you have an education, training, or experience in the specialty that is equivalent to the completion of such degree. So, for example, BS Psychology graduate ako, kailangan yung work experience ko related dun sa degree na nag-graduate that I'm graduate from. So, let's say I have an experience in working at a hospital, mental hospital. Ayun. Kasi kailangan, kung ano yung natapos mong college degree, yun din yung may work experience na meron ka. So, ayun. Kaya highly skilled and business migrants, kasi nga, you have to have a particular skill to that kind of degree you finished. So, ayan. Next, we have return migrants. Simply, ito yung tawag sa mga migrants na bumabalik from their country of origin. So, ayun nga, yung mga OFW, let's say, galing silang Saudi, and kapag bumalik na sila dito sa Philippines, tawag sa kanila return migrants. Kasi, basta from your place of origin. So, next, we have irregular migrants. So, it is a migrant. A migrant in an irregular situation may fall within one or more of the following circumstances. So, we have 3. So, first, persons who enter the country irregularly with false documents or without crossing at an official border crossing point. So, ito yung mga nagpe-present lang ng false documents. Kumbaga, hindi dumaan ng legal process, kumbaga. And pwede rin naman na nagko-cross sila ng border na illegally, kasi nga hindi naman yun yung official, hindi naman yun yung official crossing point eh. Kumbaga, ayun nga, illegally lang. Kumbaga, parang nagbakasakali ka lang na makapasok without proper screening. Kumbaga, without, kumbaga hindi chinek nung lugar na, nung bansa na yun kung yung identity mo and so on. Kumbaga, ayun nga, you presented lang with false documents. And then next, we have persons who reside in the country irregularly in violation of the terms of an entry visa or residence permit. So, persons who reside in the country irregularly, kasi nga yung residence permit ay pwede ring nag-expire na or pwede rin namang fake yung ginamit na permit. Kaya, tumutuloy ka lang dun sa lugar na yun, yun nga, parang illegal or irregular. And next, we have persons employed in the country irregularly. He or she may have the right to reside but not to take up paid employment in the country. Ito naman yung circumstances wherein pwede kang tumuloy dun sa lugar na yun, pwede kang tumira, pero hindi ka pwedeng magtrabaho. So, nangyayari naman dito, ang best example is yung mga TNT or yung mga tago ng tago. Kasi, sabi dito, these are the persons who get tourist visa or student visa, then stayed on after the visa had expired. Then, they're going to get a social security number and find a job. So, ang purpose mo lang talaga sa pagpunta sa lugar na yun is to, sabihin nga, tourist ka lang, ganyan. Kaso, nung nag-expire na yung visa mo, nagstay ka na lang doon and hindi mo na process yung papers mo. Kumbaga, illegally ka nag-work. So, illegal ka pa rin. And you are considered as an irregular migrant. So, ayun. Next, we have forced migrants. These are the persons who are forced to leave their country of origin because there is a threat to their life and livelihood. So, example is refugees. Ito yung mga people who have fled war, violence, conflict, or persecution and have crossed an international border to find safety in another country. Ito mga refugees na to, they are protected under a law. Kumbaga, legal pa rin sila kasi nga ang purpose lang naman nila is to seek safety kasi nga may violence na nagaganap dun sa lugar kung saan sila nanggaling. So, yun. So, refugees yung tawag sa mga tao na when they cross borders and seek safety in another country. So, asylum seekers naman, sila naman yung mga hindi pa na-approve or hindi pa kino-consider ng isang bansa as refugees. Kasi, hindi naman kasi basta-basta pinapapasok lang ng isang bansa yung mga tao na they claim to they claim na nagsisik lang sila ng safety. Syempre, they have to make sure na hindi ka terorista, na gusto lang pumasok dun sa bansa nila. Syempre, ini-screening pa rin yan, ini-interview, may proper documents pa rin, and so on. Para din naman makapag-provide sila sa iyo ng kung saan ka titira, ano bang pwedeng job sa'yo, or saan ka nila ililipat. So lastly, we have family members. These are the persons who migrate due to new or established family ties, and it encompasses several subcategories. So first, reunification with a family member who migrated earlier, or also it can be family accompanying a principal migrant or yung head of the family na nauna na mag-migrate dun sa lugar na yon. Pwede rin namang marriage between an immigrant and a citizen of that place, or it can also be a marriage between an immigrant and a foreigner living abroad. And last, we have the international adoption. So that's it for the types of migrants. So we move on to the next, which is the significant events in global migration. So brief history lang to because the next reporter will be discussing the detailed history of global migration. So, first, we have the migration period, which occurred between the 300 to 700 CE. It is also called the Barbarian Invasion, or in German, Völkerwanderung, or the Wandering of the People. So, dito, ang nangyari kasi parang overpopulated na yung lugar. So, yung mga nomadic Germanic people, they migrated into different parts of Europe. And then, yung exploration nila, it also led them to colonize different tribes and to expand their political power. So, dito makikita natin na yung migration, it also affects the political, kumbaga may epekto rin siya sa politics kasi ayun na, dahil sa pagpalaganap nila nung tribo nila, kumbaga they have more control or they have more power in certain areas in that country. So ayun. Next, we have Renaissance, which occurred from 14th century to 17th century, or we know that Renaissance is the rebirth of Europe. And yung age of discovery nila, ayan, nagkaroon sila ng exploration sa iba't ibang lugar. And it led them to discover new shipping routes to America, India, and the Far East. And explorers trekked across areas that weren't fully mapped. Ayun, dahil sa exploration na yun, they were able to map out certain parts na hindi nalagay doon. So, malaking tulong din talaga yung pag-migrate ng tao kasi they are also able to influence their culture, such as yung religion nila, yung clothes, yung food, and ayun nga, and usually ang nangyari kasi dito sa Age of Discovery, 'di ba? Pinalaganap nila yung Christianity, and also syempre gusto na rin nilang i-expand yung power nila. So ayun. So last, we have the Great Atlantic Migration. So ito naman yung largest migration in history from Europe to North America. So the first major wave began in 1840s with mass movements from Ireland and Germany. Yung mga Irish people kasi, they are experiencing extreme poverty and famine, or yung scarcity of food. So they have no choice but to migrate to another place. Of course, syempre para masupplyan yung basic needs nila. And yung mga Germans naman, they had to migrate to escape economic hardships. So, ito naman, they migrated for the reasons of the climate and the economy. So, in 1880s, a second and larger wave developed from Eastern and Southern Europe. So, dito naman, kaya naman nangyari to because of industrialization and urbanization. So, the Europeans, they entered US for the sake of the economy, and of course they are seeking better job opportunities, and ayun nga kasi nga nagiging mas developed na yung US noon, and ayun nga, urbanization, so better job opportunities, so they think they'll have a better life and a better future, of course. So that is the end of my presentation. So I hope that you learned something from me. So thank you.
Migration in modern times. I believe that migration is still on the move up until now, or our times, and since the earliest times, humanity has been on the move. Some people move in search for work, some because they are affected by some factors like weathers, or some go to other countries just to develop their skills or show their skills. So that's what my report is all about is for today. Okay, so moving forward, Migration in modern times. This is the third age of migrations, probably because it's what do you call that? A long-term migration today, because I believe it starts way back before 80s something, where people start moving to countries and other uh, state just for to build a new life or start a new career. That's why they migrate. And uh, migration in modern times is also the new age and the present. I'm so sorry for that. And this is also the most domestic migration of Chinos, because uh, China has been the most one of the largest country who have the most population. That's why most of the people there sumasabak ba para trumay ng ibang trabaho, or they move because China is overpopulated, and they feel like wala na silang opportunities there to prove their skills, kasi sa mga China highly skilled sila eh, kaya ganun. Tapos dahil nga sa pag-move ng mga Chinos from other countries, dumami ngayon yung mga highly skilled Chinos sa North America and Europe. Doon sila ngayon nag-migrate. Their ways of migrations, I believe, is overseas, parang barko, minsan eroplano. Since it's modern times today, usong-uso na yung mga ganun. Tapos overpopulated nga ang China. China pa more. Next. So, global migration. Ano nga ba ang global migration? I believe global migration is, what do you call that? Wait lang po, ha? Wala sa sources ko eh. Ayan. Ayan. Global migration is the, where individuals migrate out of choice. Many other individual migrate because, they are, moving because of, as I said before, there are several factors, but first let's define what is migrant muna, mga nalipat. So migrant is any person who is moving or have moved across an international border or within a state away from his/her habitual place of residence. Okay? Magiging migrant ka kasi hindi ka doon nakatira. Wala kang status doon. Hindi ka pinanganak doon. Yung movement mo is voluntary or involuntary, and ang causes ng movement mong yon is probably kung gaano kakatagal mag-i-stay doon. That's what global migrant would be. Next slide. So, based on the research of, wait lang. So sorry for that. So, based on the study that Zaika and Haas have performed, and the Levin shows, there are the changes in the global migration, and here are the six. I believe this is six. Yes. Six changes that they noticed about the process of global migration. The first one is, if there is a net migration increase, there is a net receiving decrease. Which means that kapag nagkaroon ng increase sa migration, syempre, dadaming population ng isang state or ng isang bansa, and magkakaroon ng net receiving decrease on the population, which they highly notice that kaya minsan hindi sila nagpapapasok sa bansa. Okay. So the next one is the global migration inflate based on the absolute count, not on the relative count, which means individual label. Kasi ang global migration is binibilang base sa kung ano yung magkakasama, kung anong race, something like that, ethnicity, para ma-counted siya as a population kung gaano sila karami. Yung ganun yung bilang nila, absolute count, not because of the relative count, I believe. So third one is the range that the migrants travel has increased. For example, from 2,900 kilometer magiging naging 3,600 kilometer 2,000. Well, that's because it's modern times. Nagkaroon na ng mga bagong way of transportation ngayon, or way of transporting, kaya mas lumawak pa yung range ng mga immigrant o mga pinupuntahan ng mga immigrant. The fourth one is the populations of immigrants are more scattered. Yes. Kahit saan ka magpunta, marami kang makikitang something like Chino or Americans or Spanish, habla Espanyol, char. So up to 5 is increased overall connectivity. Number of connections between countries and number of significant connections to it remains stable. Alam nyo na yan, guys. Okay, pinag-aralan natin yan before. So number 6 is there has been a change in the direction of migration. Based kanina sa sinabi na ang Chinos is parang napupunta na sa mga North America and Europe because that's the I believe west side, right? West side of China is Europe, and hindi ako sure kasi hindi ako magaling sa directions, pero I believe kaya nagkakaroon ng direction ng migrants kasi minsan they have no way means of transporting through air or through sea, kaya minsan land lang, kaya napupunta sila kung saan dikit-dikit yung bansa, and that's Europe, I believe. Kapag galing kang ibang lugar, syempre doon ka pupunta sa malayo. Okay. Pero before that, Africa ang may pinakamaraming migration before. Siguro dahil overpopulated sila before. So next, so yan, many changes have taken place when it comes to the. That's true because dahil nga sa lupang kinatatayuan ng isang bansa, marami ang nawawalan ng opportunities para magtrabaho, and nagre-reflect to sa mga kanya-kanyang countries, which means that if someone migrates, hindi naman totally lagi na pag nag-migrate isang tao hindi naman masaya sa country nila. Parang diba? Parang pag di ka naman masaya, alis ka, ganun. Minsan may ibang dahilan. Siyempre, kunwari, they want a better life, or maybe they're not satisfied with their life on their countries, kaya lilipat sila. And I believe that's all. So thank you for listening.
Good day, everybody. I am Ace Manlanat, and together with Jadiel Gonzalez, we are going to report to you the theories of global migration. So, according to the book, we actually have 7 theories that can explain why people migrate all over the world. These are the Neoclassical Theory, the push-pull framework of migration, the New Economics Theory of migration, the Dual Labor Market Theory, the Network Theory, the Migration Systems Theory, and the Cumulative Causation Theory. So I'm going to be discussing to you the first 3, while Jadiel will be discussing the last 4. Let's focus first on the Neoclassical Theory, which is a major theory in this lesson. Because in this theory, people are believed to migrate because of the country's geographical imbalance. Take note of that, the word geographical imbalance, between the supply and demand of labor. It usually happens when a country's labor supply is elastic, or it is quickly changing, especially in wages. So if there's a geographical imbalance in a country, it means that that country is having an elastic labor supply, or the wages and the compensations for the laborers are not equal or quickly changing. It is fluctuating. There's no stable giving of compensation. Even the amount of compensation, it is not stable. So because of that, people migrate, or people go to other countries. Now, another factor to also consider is the country's condition of full employment, or the ability of the country to increase chances for their citizens to be fully employed. And this is the reason why in this theory, there is a linear relationship between wage differentials and migration flows. So, employability is also an important factor, because if a country is able to provide jobs, then people will not be wanting or will not want to go to other countries. Diba? And this proves that there is a linear relationship between wage differentials and migration flows, because of course, if you are able to have a job, then there's no need to go to other countries. So wages and compensations is in this theory has a relationship with migration flows. Next, other ideas. Elimination of wage differentials will decrease the amount of people migrating. If a country is able to meet the needs of the workers and provide them good working conditions and reasonable wage, they will not be forced to move out of the country or the place where they are originally in. So basically, that's what I have said earlier. If the country is able to provide the people's needs, then they will they will stay, di ba? They will not want to go to other countries to support themselves. Global migrations happen only in labor markets, and other markets doesn't have an effect on it. So this is where the neoclassical theory has a flaw because it is quite one-sided or very narrowly only to the labor markets, as mentioned here. That in this theory, it is said that global migrations happen only in labor markets. So um, considering leisure and other migration related activities is not important here. Instead, it only focuses on the labor markets. What is a labor market? This is all about work, all about jobs, all about earning money. Yeah. And it is said in the theory that migration only happens because or inside the labor market only. Now, laws that the labor markets abide are the ones that control the exchange between receiving and sending nations. So these labor markets in this theory has laws that they abide to. And that law or those laws are the ones that control what happens between the receiving and sending nations. Other ideas? Both the receiving and sending nations benefit in global migration. In the perspective of the sending country, it will help them decrease their unemployment rate, solve scarcity, and control their population. On the other hand, the receiving country will be able to meet their needs and workforce and productivity. So in the end, global migration for both receiving and sending countries has good benefits. Now, let's move on to push-pull framework migration. This is the second theory. So instead of being focused into only one factor like the geographical imbalance from the previous theory, the push-pull framework the push-pull framework theory utilizes two categories that affect the system of migration across the globe. These are the push factors and the pull factors. So since neoclassical theory has its own lapses and own discrepancies, other theorists derive another theory that has or that considers many things, unlike in the neoclassical theory where it only focuses on the labor markets and the geographical imbalance concerning the wages, the wage differentials. Um, in this theory, there are push factors and pull factors. It is categorized into two, the push factors and the pull factors. So what are these two categories? So push factors are the factors or the reasons that pushes away, not literally, but um, in a sense, pushes away the people from the country. These are usually negative things that happens in their home country that forces them to leave to find a better life. And on the other hand, the pull factors are the reasons that is usually positive and it comes from the foreign country, from another country. These are the things that pulls the people. Um, like for example, good conditions, good life conditions. It actually pulls the people from them, or it actually pulls the people from their home country to go to them. I hope you get my point. Now let's look at the examples of push factors. First, the unemployment rate. So if a country has a high unemployment rate, then of course it pushes people to find a better place for them to have jobs, to earn money. Next is the poorness of the country, of course. Emergence of political, religious, and social disputes. So historically, there have been so many events regarding politics, religion, and social disputes that led people migrating from one country to another. Like for example, the Nazi Germany, the Nazi Germany then. Um, of course, there is an ideology that the German race is the best and should be the only one existing, if I can remember it right. So they killed um, Jewish people that led them in migrating all over the world. Even here in the Philippines, there are actually Jews that migrated here in the Philippines back when I think is it Quezon's term. I don't know if that is correct, but I hope you get my point. Next is the environmental factors, disasters, famine. One example of this is the or so or is what one example of this happened in in Ireland before. It is about their scarcity in potatoes, which is their staple diet. So because there is a scarcity of their food, um, there is famine, and that famine led them to push away to other countries. Next, armed conflict, slavery, presence of economic and cultural capital, and political fear. So that is very self-explanatory. Oh, so yes. So we have two levels of push factors in the PFM. The individual level, where the factors come from the individual themselves, for example, being jobless, having enough capital to go to another country, and the structural level. Now, let's move on to the pull factors. The examples are the following: better life conditions and wages. Of course, if a country has a better life condition and wages, it usually attracts people to come to that country and live to that country. Next, labor demands of the receiving country. Like, for example, the Canadian government is actually looking for immigrants to supply their low skilled laborers, right? They're actually planning to recruit 2 million immigrants by 2021, I guess. That's not I'm not actually sure about the date, but it is within 2021 or up to 2025, as what I have seen in other articles. But yeah, so and of course, political and religious freedom. Now, moving on to the third theory, the new economics theory of migration. Individual factors are not the only thing that affects the person's decision to migrate, contradicting the NCT. In this theory, the main reason why people migrate is to avoid risks in their household country in terms of labor, credit, insurance, etc. This is called risk aversion or risk minimization. So to better understand this theory, remember these two bolded words here, risk aversion and risk minimization. So unlike from the NCT, where it focuses on wages, on compensations, on wage differentials, and geographical imbalance. In this theory, the new economics theory of migration, people are actually migrating because they want to avoid risks or they want to avoid problems in their countries. Um, it is not only upper, I mean, unlike in the NCT, the person itself have the urge to go to another country um, because of what's happening or because of the wage differentials. But here in the new economics theory of migration, the the person is not only the soul SOLE, the sole one or the sole being that forces them to go outside the country. Um, this could be or factors from the labor, from credit, from insurance can also contribute to the decision of a person to go out of the country. And all in all, this is because they want to avoid risks or to minimize risks. So yeah, that is the first three theories. Um, the following theories will be discussed by General Gonzalez. Thank you.
So next is dual labor market theory. So ano ba ang dual labor market theory? So sa theory na to, sinasabi na ang dahilan ng pagmamigrate ng isang individual ay dahil sa in-demand na trabaho. And which is yung mga madalas na in-demand na work ay yung low-skilled laborers like mga janitor, fast food crews, or mga information desk clerk, mga ganun. So, ang ginagawa nila parang tinataasan nila yung work na yon, then yung sweldo ng work na yon, then mahihikayat nun yung mga taga-ibang bansa na punan yung mga trabaho yun. So, yun yung sa dual labor market theory. Next is sa network theory. Ang main idea ng network theory ay ang kaya daw nagmamigrate ang isang tao dahil sa connections niya sa ibang bansa like friends or families din. Dahil nga may connections siya, nakaka-apekto yun sa decision making ng isang individual sa pagmamigrate. Ayan. So, yun yung sa network theory. So, next is migration system theory. So, sa migration system theory, sinasabi na ang dahilan kaya raw nag-migrate ang isang individual ay dahil sa palitan ng pera. So, yun. Kunwari, ako, nag-migrate ako sa Canada, then nagpadala ko ng pera para sa family ko sa Pilipinas. Yung perang yon magiging cost, kaya mag-i-improve yung social status ng family ko, which will benefit the growth ng economy sa Pilipinas. Ayan. So, yun yung sa migration system theory. So, lastly, cumulative causation theory. So, sa theory na to, sinasabi na ang migration daw ay isang self-sustaining phenomena and will continue to improve as time goes by. Dahil sa network theory tsaka sa migration system theory. Kasi sa dalawang theory na yun, na inihikayat ang mga tao na mag-migrate. And yun yung main point kung bakit nagmamigrate ang tao, dahil sa connections and sa palitan ng pera. So, yun yung sa cumulative causation theory. Yun lang.
So, hello everyone. This is the last topic for global migration, which is the challenges in migration. So, alam naman natin na migration ay hindi na bago since people have been moving a lot. Diba? There are a lot of people that is transferring from country to country. So, since way back in our history, hindi na bago yung migration. So, alam naman natin na maraming advantage yung migration. They are several good impressions and benefits. But despite that, on the other face of the migration, it is facing a lot of challenges. So ano nga ba yung challenges na fini-face ng global migration? So yung first one ay yung institutional barrier. Ano nga ba yung institutional barrier? So ang institutional barrier, ito yung nagko-control and naglilimit sa galaw ng tao within the country. It also controls how many people are allowed to enter the country. It controls how many come and live the country. So, why? Why they would want to control the movement of the people? Of course, the first one is to protect the country's sovereignty. So, kailangan nila protektahan yung country nila, yung kalayaan ng country nila. And also, para ma-control din nila yung pagpasok ng mga immigrants. Kasi 'di ba may mga immigrants na pumapasok na walang document or they are illegal immigrants. So one of its goals is to control the immigrants na pumapasok na may walang document, asylum seekers and refugees. Para hindi sila maging threat sa sovereignty ng isang country. And isa sa goals din ng barrier na ito ay to protect the country against terrorism. Why? Dahil isa sa example nito ay yung 9/11 attack. Dahil way back when that happened, hindi pa ganun kahigpit yung security in the US. So, hindi nila na-monitor yung galaw ng pumapasok sa kanilang country, kaya may nakapasok na that will cause harm in the country. So, ito yung isa sa concern ng institutional barrier. to protect its country against terrorism. And the next one is human trafficking. So, ano nga ba yung human trafficking? Human trafficking, it involves the recruitment, transportation, movement, harboring of people with the purpose of exploitation. So dito, kabilang yung sexual exploitation, forced labor, slavery, and organ removal. Yung human trafficking, usually nangyayari across borders. Since across borders, dun talamak yung illegal na palitan and yung mga kagaya nito, yung human trafficking. So according to our data, it is showed na 60% of the human trafficking victims are actually foreigners. Why do we think foreigners are the most fragile in human trafficking? Kasi syempre, may mga tao na gusto makipagsapalaran from country to one another. So they are more vulnerable in human trafficking. Kasi ipinakita rin dito na karamihan sa trafficking victims are from lower areas of economic activity to wealthier regions. So it means people from poorer country tend to go to wealthier countries. Syempre, kasi it has a lot of benefits. Kapag pupunta ka sa ibang country, mas malaki yung opportunity. So, yeah, that's why. From rural to urban areas, typically, yung mga people transferring. And the third one is the European issue or the EU. So, as of now, EU has 28 members. Yung mga, of course, yung EU, maraming benefits once ikaw ay member na. But the new members has been facing a lot of challenges in integration. For example, the Bulgaria and Romania were the new members. They became an official member in 2007. So kahit na they are now a legal member of EU, they still have restrictions. They also face a lot of restrictions in the land of the old members, such as the Netherlands, the Belgium, France, Luxembourg, Germany, Malta, and UK. As I said, as the UK, kasi yung mga bagong members such as the Romania and Bulgaria, they're still not allowed to vote in the land of the old members, as I said. Tapos, it has the benefits economically. But, syempre, yung mga old members, they fear na since dumadami na yung members, tapos yung currency ay umiikot within the EU members, and yung, di ba, yung pera umiikot within the members, the unemployment will rise in the country. Tapos magiging prevalent yung poverty sa country. So dahil sa fear na ito ng mga old members, yung several protocols and policies were created para makontrol yung number ng mga tao na nag-move from country to country within EU. So on the other hand, besides the three challenges that I mentioned, the institutional barriers, the human trafficking, and the EU issue, we still have a lot. For example, are the linguistic and cultural differences. Syempre, we are not speaking the same language. I mean, hindi lahat ng country ay same ng language ang ginagamit. So it is a barrier as well as the culture. Syempre, we have different culture from different countries. And syempre, dahil iba yung currency, iba yung pera na ginagamit, the housing transaction cost is also a problem. And iba rin yung rights from country to country. Of course, iba yung rights mo kung ikaw talaga ay citizen, at iba rin yung rights mo kung ikaw ay immigrant. Syempre, yung portability of pension rights across the countries is also an obstacle in the migration. And with that, I am leaving you a quote by Ellsworth Huntington. Although mountains may guide migrations, the plains are the regions where people dwell in greatest numbers. So that's all. That is the end of Global Migration Report. Thank you for listening.